Hello again, YouTubers. This is my follow-up video on the conversion of a Harbor Freight 125 a flux core welder from AC to DC electrode negative. Alright, well, I spoke too soon. If you remember in the last video I said there was a lot of room inside here because they had repositioned the transformer and they went to a modular fan which allowed them to move the transformer back. Well, there was plenty of room until I got this big hunkin' capacitor here, which is 45,000 microfarads. I put that in a parallel with the smaller capacitor that I had before, and guess what? It didn't fit with the modular fan, so I had to remove the fan and move it to the outside, which was pretty easy because it's a nice modular fan, just 4 screws, turn it right around, put it on the outside. I added a small fan guard so you didn't inadvertently stick your finger in it, and now I had plenty of room to mount the two capacitors, which I have bleed down with two 100 ohm resistors over here. In fact, I tested them before I closed the whole thing up. I charged up the capacitors. These two resistors will bleed these two capacitors down in about 10 seconds after the current is killed and you just have the capacitor circuit. That's pretty quick. I'm not worried about arcing, and they don't get too hot. It seems perfectly easy. Within 10 seconds, I'm down to 0 voltage. Other things I've done, of course, I changed the ground clamp to something a little more substantial. This has some copper connectors on it. It's got a much heavier spring, and I also changed my wire. I'm using Lincoln multi-pass wire instead of the flux core wire which came with it. This is a whole different welder than the way it came out of the box. Much hotter at least on the maximum setting. Most of my welding I'm doing on maximum setting with about a wire feed speed of around 7, and that seems to fit the way that I weld and the type of material I've been welding, which is basically 3/16 or 1/4 inch material. And I did notice that on a low power setting, this thing doesn't have much pop at all. You can weld up some wire with it. You can weld up some thin gauge metal with it. You got to be a little careful. You can burn through. I burned through some wire I was welding up, and I burned through some thin gauge. It's just more a question of my lack of technique, I guess, than the machine. But it's no ball of fire in terms of heat on the lower setting. But man, when you put it on max, this thing is really hot, and it really gets some good penetration. Get a little bit of spatter still, but no more BBs. It doesn't throw these large BBs anywhere, just throws a little bit of spatter. Would I do this again? You bet. This is an entirely new welder. I've got $87 into the welder. I've got about $40. The most expensive thing I bought was this larger capacitor, which was like $15, and then $3 or $4 shipping cost me almost 20 bucks. Everything else, I pretty much made up the parts. I got this capacitor cheap, made my own heat sink. The 150 volt rectifier was, I think, $10 on eBay with a little bit of, I think it was free shipping. So yeah, I would definitely do this again. So all you guys out there who have one of these or thinking of getting one of these or found one of these in the garage, certainly pays to convert them.